Today, I'm gonna be telling you why legacy matters in Honkai Star Rail, and why it's actually something that people shouldn't overlook, despite their recency bias towards new developments. But before that, head to U7Buy, your ultimate gaming hub for safe, fast, and cheap in-game top-ups. From Honkai Star Rail to all your favorite titles, we've got you covered. You can trust reviews on U7Buy on Trustpilot, and you'll see that they have a high rank there. Our Honkai Star Rail Direct top-up page lets you recharge instantly. It's even cheaper on U7Buy. I'll even be showing you a live example by buying this monthly pass, which is only $3.60 compared to the $5 on the official stores. Plus, they deliver in seconds. There's no need to wait for your order. Use code at checkout for an extra 5% discount. Perfect for last-minute pulls, battle passes, or surprising a fellow trailblazer. If you spend $80 per month on U7Buy, you will get a HSR Express Supply Pass that costs only 1 cent. It is nearly free. Click the link in my description to visit U7Buy and support my channel. Anyways, let's perform a thought experiment for those who value logic over GF flop. If a certain 20th century dictator were resurrected today and promised to focus exclusively on urban planning and never touch a weapon again, would you invite him to the table? Of course not, because legacies aren't patches. In Honkai Star Rail, Firefly is that dictator. You don't get to overwrite 15 months of atrocities with 1 week of decent behavior, and I'm going to explain why her 3.8's usability is the greatest gaslighting campaign in gacha history. From version 2.3 to 3.7, Firefly wasn't just bad, she was a systemic failure. For over a year, she occupied the slot in the roster like a parasite. She fed on your jades and gave you nothing but emotional value in return. A character's legacy is the sum of their utility over time. Firefly's legacy is 1.5-year void. That is a stain on the meta that no 3.8's after-sales service can scrub clean. Even Helen Keller would feel that this kit is a disaster. You don't need sight to recognize a unit that hits like a wet paper towel. Actually, that might be slander towards those paper towels. In that 1.5 year, her performance was so abysmal and dogshit due to requiring zero skill whatsoever that Boot Hill managed to match her on Choir Boss that shows her to 300% efficiency at least. Speaking of Choir Boss, she already couldn't 1-cost zero cycle it literally half a patch after her release, even though its HP didn't increase. It only took the removal of Turbulence for her to fail on her own fucking show boss, while Akron actually did 1-cost, with multiple different teams. Literally 1 patch after her release, on a zero fire res Aventurine, she already needed E2 baseline to zero cycle. This is the fastest jump to E2 being mandatory in history, only matched by Finan. I was going to stop trashing on her pretty early on, but that's physically impossible because she kept losing to more and more DPS, accumulating in losing to Arlen in AS, then in MOC too. At that point, I realized there's no way in hell I can stop trash-talking her, because this thing is not a real unit. Even if we talk strictly about clearing and not speedrunning, it was literally impossible to even clear 1 star for a variable dice with a fully decked out E2 Firefly team. It got so bad that you can find Ent Sensei begging for Anaxa Rots in Genius Archive server because Firefly literally failed to function. This is the same guy that kept spamming how Firefly is future-proof and how Boot Hill was beaten, only for Boot Hill to clear really comfortably while she can't even get a dice, even at double-digit cost. Even the most delusional idiot had to admit she was dysfunctional and unusable. At this point, the apologists are screaming, "But she's usable now!" Which is true, I guess. Congratulations! You've successfully rehabilitated a war criminal into a janitor. Being usable in 3.8 is an insult, not a buff. When a character spends 80% of their life cycle as a liability, Usable is just a polite way of saying obsolete but functional. If you forgive Firefly now, you are essentially saying that time has no value. You are saying that the 15 months of her being trashed didn't happen. That is NPC logic. Compare this to Seele. Seele arrived as a sovereign and still stayed strong without any major after-sale service. Not a single boost from limited 5 stars at low cost, while Firefly needs a 500% power boost from Dahlia to compete with her. In HSR, we don't play in a vacuum. To look towards the future, we must first acknowledge the past. A character like Seele has a legacy of dominance. A character like Seele has a legacy of persistence. Firefly? Her legacy is incompetence followed by being mid. After all, she can barely compete with mid-tier 3.x units, not even high tiers. You don't get a seat at the tier 0 DPS table just because you stopped being a war crime and started being mid. Watching a Firefly main celebrate what happened in 3.8s is like watching someone thank a mugger for leaving them bus fare. You aren't winning. You've just been gaslit into believing that is a victory because you've forgotten what an actually strong DPS looks like. This is a prime example of meta Stockholm Syndrome. These people have been kidnapped and mind controlled by the GF slop to the point where they can't think for themselves. I've spoken on Seele's legacy and it's the opposite of this. She can be equated to being the Michael Jordan of HSR DPS, which is a huge contrast because both of them are getting Nova Flare. That's why I decided to make this video now. They're both in the same boats, but one of them have an actually beautiful legacy while the other is Hitler. How ironic. I have no idea if the Nova Flare can save Firefly as a DPS because in truth her kid's identity will always be Fireflop. They would need to overhaul how she worked from the ground up and give her a real skill ceiling to fix her. And I don't know if Hoyo can do that. Well, that's all for today's pre-Nova Flare discussions, and I'll see you in the next one.